Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Electric Viking. Now, as you know, I am a huge fan of electric cars, electric mobility, electric trucks, electric buses, pretty much electric everything. But there's a reason for this. One of the key reasons is that they are powered by electricity. And seeing as the sun shines down on this planet every day of the year, there is a lot of electricity that we can use. Now, of course, at the moment, much of the world's grid is dirty. Much of the world's grid uses fossil fuels. But the reason that I am such a big fan of electric cars and electric mobility and electric everything, electric aeroplanes, yep, one day it will happen, is because eventually the grid will be 100% clean. What is the reason for this? Well, the reason for this is not because people feel like that is the right thing to do, but it's simply for economic reasons. Every country in the world will eventually convert their grids 100% to renewable energy, simply for, like I said, purely mathematical, logical, economic reasons. Now, I've talked about on this channel before the declines in the cost of solar and batteries and wind generation. Now, solar has declined in cost by 90% over the last 15 years, and the cost continues to decline every single year, making coal more expensive right now. Now, when you talk about coal, you need to consider all the costs involved, and it is definitely more expensive right now. If you want to start a new coal plant now, or you want to start a new solar and storage plant, guess which one is cheaper to own? Guess which one will give the developer a better return on income over the long run? Well, depends on the place you're at, whether that be solar or wind and battery storage. But either way, they are now cheaper. And this is leading to a lot of coal companies going bankrupt. If you don't believe me on these economics and the maths I'm talking about, go to Tony Sieber's YouTube channel, Rethink X. Watch some of his videos. There's mountains of compelling evidence and data there. These guys have done literally thousands of hours of work on this, and they know what they're talking about. Now, in the power sector that supplies electricity for much of the United States, fossil fuels continue to be a large emission source. Coal, which accounted for just 19% of electricity generated in the US, only 19% in 2020, created 54% of the power sector's emissions. So if we just replace that 19% of the United States emissions sector, just 19%, with renewable energy, then we removed 54% of the power sector's emissions. And that is awesome news. Now, last week, Energy Australia Australia is probably one of the most coal-dependent countries on the planet. People here use coal as marketing to become politicians. It's a joke. But Energy Australia recently pledged to ditch coal by 2040, closing coal-fired power stations all over the country. In other good news, this week a report emerged that Bulgaria has proposed a plan to the European Commission to shut its huge Maritsa lignite complex in 2025. In Turkey, which is currently being ravaged by wildfires, a new report notes that in the last 6 months, 6 proposed coal plants have been scrapped and 2 other big projects have been dramatically scaled back. Now, as many of you know, the biggest coal companies in the United States have gone bankrupt, all of them within the last decade. It's somewhat of a joke at this point. As Germany's September general election draws closer, another Conservative Party leader has flagged the prospect of an end date to coal power earlier than 2038, which is their previously agreed on time to get rid of coal in Germany. Now, in the United States, new data indicates a significant reduction in the number of operating coal mines, especially in Appalachia. In Italy, Intesa San Paolo, one of the country's largest banks, announced a tightening of its coal lending policy, the one that still leaves it well behind leaders in the sector. For its part, HSBC, which is a major shareholder in a wide range of companies with proposals for 70 new coal plants, is playing both sides of the climate street. It is part of a consortium of financial services companies pitching a proposal to finance the early closure of Asian coal plants. We'll get to this early closure of Asian coal plants, which is planned to happen soon in just a moment. Now, in the United States, 80 coal plants with a total capacity of 98.3 gigawatts are publicly scheduled for full retirement over the next 3 decades. In other words, yeah, there won't be any coal left in 3 decades in the United States, but I don't think it'll take that long. I think it'll take more like 15 years for these coal companies to go bankrupt. Noticeably, most of the coal plant closures are targeted in the Midwest, which uses the most coal for power. And most of the retirements are actually coming earlier, much earlier than expected, with the 2020s seeing more than half of announced closures and retired capacity, 53.6 gigawatt hours. So in other words, by the end of 2030, most of the coal power stations in the United States will have been closed. Now, even China is getting in on the act with, like I said, announcing this week that they would stop funding coal projects abroad. And they've even vowed to become carbon neutral by 2060. I believe it'll happen long before that. I believe that China's current rulers, government dictators, they don't quite understand the economics of coal versus renewable energy. But sure enough, they'll figure it out soon enough. Now, getting back to Australians, Aussies and their love for coal, the black, dirty stuff. Well, this week, according to OpenNEM, Australia's reliance on wind, solar and hydropower reached an all-time high of 60%. And, well, as you know, here in Aussie land, we have a hell of a lot of sun. We have so much sun that it just makes zero sense that we would have any coal left in this country. But because we love to dig things out of the ground to make money, politicians are trying to continue this idea that coal is a good thing. It won't be long though before it's gone. Now, getting back to Asia for a minute, things are changing fast there. The Asian Development Bank plans to create funds, possibly next year, to facilitate early closures of coal-fired power plants even in Southeast Asia. The new funds will buy such plants and take an active role in their management, or mismanagement, intentional mismanagement, I would hope. Working with governments and financial institutions, the ADB plans to launch the funds in countries such as Indonesia that rely heavily on coal for power generation, aiming to speed their transition to a low-carbon economy. To coincide with the United Nations COP26 Climate Summit, the ADB will revise its energy policy. For a start, we will stop extending loans to build new coal-fired power plants. We will also establish funds to help retire existing plants before the end of their life cycles, said ADB President Masatsugu Asakawa in an exclusive interview with Nikkei. COP26 will open in late October in Glasgow, Scotland. Now, the funds. Well, they're going to be used. So the funds will be financed with government grants and long-term low-interest loans and solicit investments from financial institutions. Several lenders are believed to be showing interest. The ADB aims to set up a fund to buy power plants and another to promote renewable energy in Southeast Asia. It has started consultations with the governments and utilities in coal-dependent countries such as Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. Now, Asakawa did not disclose the size of these funds, but they could be huge. Coal-fired power plants can cost more than 300 billion yen, $2.7 billion US dollars, depending on their generating capacity. The first purchase is expected in 2022. Now, when I learned this, I was surprised by this statistic. Asia accounts for 60% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. It is also vulnerable to natural disasters triggered by climate change. The ADB has set a goal of investing $80 billion in projects to address climate change between 2019 and 2030, Asakawa said. Now, coal-fired power plants are typically designed to operate for 30 to 40 years. The ADB hopes that by buying the plants, it can shorten the time needed for utilities to recoup their investment and depreciation costs so they can be closed earlier by even 5 or 10 years, Asakawa said. Now, I personally think this could be some kind of, what's the right word for this? Conspiracy, collusion, something bad is going on here, because why are they buying these coal power stations when basically these coal power stations will go extinct of their own accord very, very quickly? If you look at Tony Seaver's research on Rethink X, he discusses this issue, saying there's going to be literally hundreds of billions of dollars worth of losses in the fossil fuel sector because of the investments put into many of these coal power plants, where investors are never going to get their money back because even right now today, many of these plants operate at a loss because they can't compete against renewable energy or against other forms of energy generation. So in other words, it does appear as though this is some kind of bailout to the industry. That said, if they can get rid of them quicker, that's a good thing. So what percentage of global energy output do coal plants account for? They actually account for nearly 40% of global electricity output, according to the International Energy Agency. That proportion is higher in the Asia-Pacific region at around 60%, which is crazy considering the amount of sun in the Asia-Pacific region. Reducing reliance on coal will help transform the region into a low-carbon society. Asia accounts for around 80% of global coal consumption. Now, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam replace half their coal-fired power plants with ones powered by renewable energy, their greenhouse gas emissions would fall by an estimated 200 million tons per year, equivalent to taking 61 million conventional vehicles off the road. That's huge. Now, the hurdles to such a shift in Asia in some ways remain high at this point in time, at least. Coal is a major power source for many emerging economies in Asia because of its relatively abundant supplies. Renewable energy has a low environmental impact, but power output fluctuates depending on the weather and the time of day. If a hasty shift to clean energy leads to power shortages, it could hamper efforts to nurture industries in fast-growing emerging economies. To achieve a low-carbon society, ensuring a stable power supply is essential, so we need battery storage. Realistically, right now, the world's battery companies just can't supply enough batteries. We need more battery storage. Fortunately, many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested in this area right now. Now, Asakawa became the ADB president in January 2020 after his predecessor, Takehiko Nakao, stepped down before completing his 5-year term. Asakawa's second term will begin in November. Asakawa said he has been busy responding to the coronavirus pandemic since taking office. He said, "We've allocated a $20 billion relief package to directly supplement the state finances of emerging economies. We also launched a $9 billion vaccine initiative. But even when countries have funds, the establishment of vaccine rollout frameworks is sometimes delayed. We aim to play a part in helping improve rollout capabilities in Asia." Now, like I said at the start of this video, the cost of solar generation, wind generation, energy generation, and battery storage will continue to decline dramatically over the next decade. Now, battery packs in cars have reduced in cost over the last 12 years by 88%, it was reported yesterday by the American Energy Agency, whatever they're called. But that was the figure that we got. But they gave a number, right? Their number was the average cost per pack usable on usable batteries is $157 per kilowatt hour. However, BYD's costs are, well, they said $93 per kilowatt hour, meaning nearly half of that number already. Now imagine in 9 years from now, 2030, when hundreds of billions of dollars have been invested into batteries and the scale is far larger, the cost will just continue to decline. The same thing will happen with solar and wind, and we're going to see a much cleaner planet by 2040. Whether you want to believe me or not, this world will be better for your kids and their kids than you think. Thanks for watching the video. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.